Welcome back to Arise Prime Time. I'm Charles Iniyagolu, and I have a guest commentator with me for the rest of the program who's going to give us his personal take on the news and issues of the day. And he's the Professor of Communications, Arise News Analyst, and Deputy Dean of the Postgraduate School at Bayes University in Abuja, Professor Abiodun Adeniyi. Thank you very much indeed. Great to see you again.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
You haven't been around for a while.
Yeah, I went outside it briefly.
Good to see you again. Let's start with that group that calls itself the Pro-Nigeria Group. They marched in solidarity with the CBN today over the Naira redesign policy. What do you make of all of that?
Well, no doubt. Their motive, I think, it's okay. It's reasonable. It's a policy that should actually bring about some sanity, correct the imbalances between liquidity and, of course, and what is probably reflected in the treasury. It's not a bad policy, but it just speaks to the problem that we have as a nation. Where we have citizens, constantly fighting with the state because of a level of faithlessness. Those who fight using hard power are probably the terrorists and the bandits, and the kidnappers and the insurgents, those who are physically confronting the state. But there are also those who confront the state using soft power. And those are the saboteurs, those who make sure that they circumvent government policies, processes and procedures, like a policy that is otherwise salutary, like this currency exchange. We have seen it happen in other parts of the world, and it's all often seamless. But when it comes to Nigeria, when you have this kind of policies, you just find out that it's not working. And that's why we raise the bigger question of why don't things work? Things don't easily work here because citizens are apparently at war with the state.
So they're undermining
They're undermining the state.
Right.
This is that they come through soft power, like the saboteurs, the functionaries and operatives in the banks, and the retail sector, happening again or reflecting, rearing their head, in trying to prevent the smooth exchange from the old currency to the new one.
But I mean, is that happening because, I don't doubt what you're saying, that there are saboteurs and all the rest of it, but is that happening because at the outset the implementation is faulty?
I don't think so, really. When will implementation be right? When we talk about timing, when will the time be right for policies, to be implemented? If we are a nation of patriots, a nation of people that believe really in the state, in the nation state that is so-called, if we believe in ourselves, trust in the entity called Nigeria, there's a way in which we can be passionate about government policy. But there's a huge level of deficit. There's a huge deficit in trust, between the citizen and the state and the policies of the state and how citizens react to it. Every policy direction, every policy pronouncement, result in people trying to cash in on it, take advantage of it, towards self-aggrandizement. And that's the problem we're having. So if you did it, for instance, maybe 1 year ago, you probably would have witnessed the same thing. And if you held on and probably do it close to the end of the year, you probably will still see the same thing. So it's still about problematic citizen-state relationship, one that is concerned about using soft power, to harm the state. So it's again remind us of what we need to do in the next 2-3 weeks about changing leadership. What kind of leader do we want? How will the leader help us, bring about a situation where we have an improved relation, improved trust, between us as citizens and the state, as the case could be.
Well, given the fact of what you said, how do you think all that is going to affect the election? There are just a few days before the old Naira is phased out.
I think, government has assured us that they are working hard. The president said 7 days, which I think is not right in my own opinion, because why 7 days? I thought that immediate directive will have been given by the central bank to the commercial bank. Central bank is aware of those that they gave the monies to, isn't it? So why don't you give, matching on that, release these funds, and of course apprehend, those who are preventing the policy from being seamlessly implemented. What are the agencies doing? Yes, we have seen the FCC, ISSB moving out, But this is coming rather too late.
Yeah,
I
but
believe that,
given that, how much does that concern you, that it might have a deleterious effect on the election? Because beyond the concern about vote buying, I mean, people have to get to polling
they have to go. But I don't think it should affect it, Charles. But I want to be optimistic. First, I'm seeing that when I was coming to the studio, I saw that there were queues at the what do you call it, ATM machines.
Right.
Yes, I understand that they're not giving enough money, but at least we are seeing action. Things are moving on. And do not forget that the polls too, you're supposed to be registered where you don't have to travel, where you don't have to go too far. It's supposed to be close to your place. So it shouldn't be a reason why the election should not be free and fair, and at the end of the day, credible.
Right. Well, let's talk about the other point that you raised just a minute ago, and that was the need for Nigerians to vote in the right leadership and so on in 2023. We've just spoken to the one of the founding partners at Next Year that conducted a poll across Nigeria. That poll has become extremely controversial, maybe because of its closeness to the election. A lot of people in the APC particularly have called it intensely partisan because it seems to favor Peter Obi, but it also suggests that neither Peter Obi nor any other candidate is going to get the required 25% and is likely to go into a runoff. What are your thoughts?
Well, from listening to him, from reading the polls, from the details and listening to him, I think there's a high level of empiricism, A lot of work went into it, we tend to mathematize the process. And of course, reasonably, really, you can see evidence-based research using all the appropriate methodologies. That's their own, really. But the problem now is the time it is coming out, And of course, you do not expect that this kind of result at this time will not be politicized. We're in a system that is not yet very used to polls. We don't believe in it. We are sometimes through that at such scientific endeavors. But if you look at his explanation and the analysis, really, you see high level of empiricism. And of course, I listened to him. I'm trying to draw an analogy of the soup, which is actually very, very correct. That's what polls are. No matter
because
how
you are a professor of communications, you would know a lot about because
I'm a student of communications. So no matter how big a pot is, you still have to use a spoon. No matter how big the pot of soup is, at the end of the day, you still have to use a spoon to test it.
Well, actually, I just lift the pot and pour it over my face.
So that's what it is, A nation of 200 million people, 90-something million registrants, you cannot poll all of them. You still have to get a sample. Sometimes it could even be 50, as small as 50. As long as your analysis, are mathematical, it could be a pointer. But this is not to say that sometimes that there cannot be, a divergence. This is not to say that sometimes there cannot be a disconnect between theory and practice. But sometimes it can actually be indicative. And do not forget, the weakness of most of these polls is that the timing matters, really. They may do another one in another 1 week and you'll see a different result. In another 2 weeks close to the election, you see a different result. Because so many things determine, who a particular voter will actually vote for, and sometimes it can be shifty. As the case, it depends on a lot of things.
Sure,
really.
but we
may not necessarily begin to look at those things.
But we know that in the case of Nigeria, Nigeria is not a very clearly defined sort of society. There's so many sort of murky areas and so on, aren't there? So if you're using a methodology that would work in maybe the UK or America, and that's an established methodology, you would have to kind of, rejig that in order to fit the Nigerian circumstance. So maybe you need a bigger sample size
no, Prof.
in order to take in all those people. I'm not a prof yet. You're the prof.
No, Charles. Logistics matter. And of course, research is research anywhere in the world. It just depends on your method. And of course, outcomes. Also matter. Outcome is often a product of your method, and of course methods are similar. It's about application and interpretation, and that's what I think they did. Like I said, it's a new thing in our climb, but often it points at the ideal. But what is our own level of compliance with the ideal? We might see deviation in that regard because so many things determine who will vote for. Sometimes on that day, you may even find people changing their mind because they are not probably mobilized, by a particular candidate. that could be a reason why
That is true.
the result may not may just give us something else.
That's a very
so many factors
thing.
will come into play at the end of the day, Charles.
And taking into account that you are a professor of communications, the deputy dean of the postgraduate school at Bayes University in Abuja, as as equally importantly, an Arise News analyst.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I have to agree with your analysis.
Thank
you very much.
I'm highly
indeed,
honored,
Prof.
Charles. Thanks.
Professor Abiodun Adeniyi there. Thank you very much indeed.
A pleasure.
And that's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again tomorrow from me and the entire team here in Abuja. Bye-bye, and thank you for watching.